Hello and welcome to the Elevate podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Nowakowski. I am a salon owner, educator, mindset, and leadership coach that helps salon owners go from overwhelmed and burnt out to motivated and empowered. It is my mission to help you systemize your business, generate more profit, and create a career that you are absolutely in love with. Join us every week to learn about the small shifts you can make to elevate your business regarding mindset, marketing, social media, business systems, and so much more. Welcome to the Elevate podcast. On today's episode, I am so excited to interview my former coaching client, Erynn Russell. She is the owner of Adorn Hair Artistry, and she is working towards the goal of creating a non-toxic salon space that gives stylists the freedom and emotional safety to truly thrive. I am so excited to chat with you because we worked together one-on-one. So it's so great to see your growth and your progress. So I would love for you to share a bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got into the beauty industry.
My name is Erynn. I own a three-chair commission salon outside of Milwaukee in Brookfield, Wisconsin. I've been in the industry for 12 years now, which is absolutely crazy to say out loud and makes me feel some type of way. And I've done a little bit of everything. I worked in commission salons for years. I taught for Top Professional for 3 years as like an actual brand educator, which had always been a dream of mine. I worked independent out of a single suite rental situation and then eventually transitioned into salon ownership 1 year ago in March. I'm married and I have 3 guinea pigs. And that's kind of the synopsis of who I am in the industry.
So I love the topic of today's conversation because we are going to get real about what that first year of salon ownership looks like. Wondering what it's like to work with me? Want to know what I've tried and tested in my salon and how you can create more freedom as a salon owner? I'm excited to offer an exciting way to get my coaching lessons to you in our podcast subscription. The Elevate Insider is an inside look into my coaching calls and includes exclusive content from me. These episodes contain coaching lessons and the exact steps you need to take to grow your salon. Plus, you'll receive special PDFs and supporting documents so that you can easily take action. To learn more and to become an insider, visit opulentbeautypro.com/insider or find an episode of the Elevate Insider on Apple Podcasts. And just be really honest, because owning a salon is so over glamorized on social media and people really only show the highlight reel and they make it seem like it's so easy, but it takes a really unique type of person to really do it well and to mentally make it through. It is very, very, very difficult to juggle all the things. I think just any business, but more so because I feel like the salon industry is so volatile with like the loss of team members, and so much of your success really does ride on the people that you bring into your business because obviously they're the ones generating revenue, right? So one person leaves, the whole thing can fall apart. So
yeah, I don't know what it is about the year mark, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, this doesn't feel as impossible anymore. You say this all the time. It isn't for everybody. And I can absolutely see why so many people transition to just rental, which sometimes sounds relieving. Sometimes I'm like, that sounds kind of nice, but I don't think for myself, it wouldn't be an actual stable
no. You know, people think it's easier. It's not. And you make no money because I did it myself. I was like, oh, I can't handle this. I can't handle managing people. It's just too much, but you still have to manage people and people still expect you to help build their books. But then you make no money because they're just paying a small amount in rent because there's only so much you can charge for rent unless you're going to do like go big or go home. So because I always talk about having a 3-chair salon and how you can make a 3-chair salon $1 million salon. Like, and I love that you did that. I think a lot of people want to go big or go home, and that's not necessary. You can open a boutique salon and still generate an amazing amount of revenue, but have smaller overhead so your profit margin can truly be something that is sustainable for you as an owner. So When we talk about opening your salon, was there a deciding factor or a specific moment you decided that you wanted to open your salon? And what was that one thing that you were like, yes, I need to open my own space?
The long answer is quite a journey. I don't think there was just one factor for me. Speaking on like how it's over glamorized, when I went to beauty school, I had an instructor who worked there part-time and she owned like we grew up in a small town in central Wisconsin. And she owned like the very cool salon in town. And so I just really looked up to her and I was like, yes, I want to do that. And at the time I saw salon ownership as the pinnacle of success in our industry. And then I worked in commission salons that were completely dysfunctional. And there were many years where I felt, I don't want to do that. I don't want to own a mess like this. I just want to do hair. I will also say the first 5 years of my career, I was very young. I graduated beauty school and I was still 18 and I was not ready for any kind of responsibility. But when I left the commission salons that I worked at and went independent I worked almost completely alone for 3 years and having that like space and time to reflect, I realized that I really lacked mentorship. And I felt a great deal of almost resentment because I truly believe that I would be even further than I am now if I had had somebody to advocate for me, just ask advice. I had nobody to ask for advice. That's not the business model that was set up for me when I was working behind the chair early on. So I think the realization that I wanted to mentor people the way I had not been mentored, but also, when I worked alone, I found such fulfillment with my clients. I left feeling such joy in my heart every day, just working one on one, connecting with them. And there's so many people in our industry that leave prematurely or they leave eventually because they're not being fulfilled. We were promised this, really great career that's going to be so fun and you're going to make so much money. And then it doesn't happen. And you're like, well, F this, I'm out. And I had finally found a way to make myself happy behind the chair. And I really wanted to share that with people and also to create a positive change in our industry. You've talked about this a lot, like a lot of salons are toxic workplaces. And it's just such a shame that there are so many inspired and talented stylists out there who just never find the right place. And when I went independent, it was not because I wanted to own a business at that time. I left my commission salon and went independent because there were no other options in my area. My salon owner was paying me very well. So my options were to either take a pay cut and go work at a place that had all the same problems or to work for myself. And that's not a choice that's right for everybody. There's so many people, right, that go into rental and they're like, well, I don't like this either. So I think I just really wanted to create a space for stylists to truly thrive and find the happiness that I had found.
Yeah, I feel like you and I have a very similar purpose. I actually just got a new stylist. She's like, I'm so excited to have her on our team. And it's so disheartening when you interview people and you see these people who are new in the industry who aren't, receiving that mentorship that they're truly craving and seeking. And to hear the stories of what they go through, the mistreatment and just like lack of consciousness that these people have that own these businesses. When we open a salon, you have to do it because you want to be a leader, not because you feel like it's the pinnacle of success. Because being a salon owner is not glamorous and it is the hardest job in the entire industry to be an owner. It's very lonely. So to hear that that is your purpose, it just fills my heart up because we need more salon owners who truly understand that it's more than just, having a salon. It's about really mentoring and helping people grow. So when we talk about your first year of ownership, you said when we were kind of chatting in the DMs, you said it was really eye-opening to you. How would you describe your first year of salon ownership? Just be real, raw, and honest.
My first year, and I was telling you a little bit about this too, the context of my personal life. I was planning a wedding. We opened in March. My husband and I got married in November, and we moved apartments and all this other stuff. It was 100% without a doubt the most challenging year of my life. And not just the first year of ownership, but the whole process from trying to look for a space and feeling like, oh, maybe I want to own a salon to opening the doors to where we are at today was just so incredibly challenging that I mean, it's so funny, right? Because everyone tells you how hard solo ownership is. Oh, it's so hard. The first year is the hardest. The first 1 to 3 years are terrible. I had people actively tell me not to do it because maybe they had done it and it was unsuccessful, or they were in it and they hated it, or whatever the reason was. But it wasn't terrible, but it was really, really challenging. And it felt really unfair in a way because here was this dream that I finally was achieving. And I kind of hated it for a hot minute. And that sucked. That felt very like, why did I do this? I felt like I blew my life up. And I didn't. There was a lot of really scary moments in which it felt like everything was about to fall apart. And then it got better and it got better and it got better and it got more stable. I can totally see why people do this and leave and go, I'm just going to rent my chairs or I'm going to close. But I signed a 5 year lease. So I was committed. I didn't really have another option. And I'm really glad I pushed through because now it's been really, really fun and fun moments in that first year. It wasn't all bad, but the majority of my first year of salon ownership I felt blindsided by so many things. So that felt unfair in a way, you know?
Yeah, I think as an owner, you have to have resilience. And if you don't have the ability to build resilience, you don't make it because you do get blindsided by so many unexpected things. And the idea of leading a team, like you and I both wanted to open a salon because we truly wanted to lead and help people grow and change. But that has to be reciprocated by the people that you hire. And sometimes the people that you hire are very resistant to wanting to grow and change, right? So, that is something I could see could be very blindsiding. But out of all of the things that happened in that first year that you felt were very difficult, because I feel like true growth comes from really experiencing hard and difficult things. What were the two or three most valuable lessons you learned during that first year, and how can others learn from these lessons that you experienced?
So the first one was definitely something that you shared with me when I was being coached with you and working with you. I don't know if you remember, but I was like frantically voice memoing you near constantly. So I also just have to say thanks for dealing with that. And it wasn't just you, like anytime something felt like a crisis or I didn't know what to do or I was doubting, did I make the right decision? Was that the right call? What's going to happen? I was blowing up my family's phone, my friend's phone. And what I realized after some reflection was I'm seeking assurance and validation from people that can't give it to me. Because if you don't work in this industry, you don't get it. And a lot of times they would give me advice where I'd be like, no, that's not helpful. But you had told me when it comes to making decisions to go back to those core values you set for yourself as a salon owner and a leader and use them as like a compass to make your decisions. And that was so pivotal and such an aha moment for me because it felt like, oh, that's a really easy, it's not always easy, but a clear direction to go in when I'm unsure. And also always ties into like your culture. So I think it's really hard when you first open because you have like this vision of a culture but you don't have it yet because you don't have people in your business to like perpetuate your culture and on it and all of those things. So it took me a minute to figure out what I wanted that to look like and what my core values really needed to be. Like, I think at first, one of them, I can't remember what it was, but it kind of made me feel like I always had to be there for everybody all the time. And that just wasn't working. So I changed it to a different core value that fit what was going to work better. And just knowing that that's something you can do is so helpful. And then I think that ties into just learning to trust the decisions you make and learning to trust yourself and knowing you can't ask other people to make choices for you. And at the end of the day, the choice you made is the right one because it's the only one that was made and you're in charge. But being in charge for the first time is a really weird feeling. So you're kind of like, wait, do I ask other people if this is right? How do I know if it's right? And I think I had to get comfortable with just trusting my gut. And that advice you gave me was so incredibly helpful. And I still use it all the time. And I tell my team the same thing like, who do you want to be? What are your core values as a stylist? Do you want to be a stylist that's always available to everybody? Or do you want to be a stylist with a great work life balance? That's just, can be helpful in making those choices. So I would say the second biggest lesson I learned was, I mean, you've heard it before, right? Like hire slow, fire fast. But again, this goes back to like, you have this vision of a culture, you have this vision of what you want your team to be like and what you want the vibe to be like. I definitely learned you cannot run a salon on vibes. That's not a business. But when I first started hiring people, I thought I had a clear vision of who I needed. But when I look back on it, it was kind of just like, well, I want to hire people who are nice and want to learn and are looking for a salon. If you were building out your dream target clientele, that would not be specific enough. And I think the same applies to hiring. But it took me some time of seeing what is my own capacity for what I can offer people and what is our environment like now that we've been open for a few months and who is actually going to succeed in that environment. And I've learned that my salon's environment requires a fair amount of independence and logical reasoning and I need people who can make decisions for themselves. So, for example, a new graduate is not a great fit for my salon because I don't have a training program. So I'm not going to hire a new graduate. If I could go back in time, I would have gotten a lot more clear on what I want my atmosphere and environment and culture to really be. And it has to be more than just nice people and good vibes. And who am I specifically looking for? What experience level? It's more than just personality, although that plays a huge factor into it too, obviously. I think those were the two like key realizations I had months down the road. But I also don't know if those are things that you can learn without going through it. And that's hardest part, I think, of this whole experience is you have to go through it to grow through it. And it's the same as being a hairstylist. You have to fail in order to figure out what to do differently, but it feels like a much bigger loss is at risk when you are making mistakes as an owner. And that was really scary.
Okay, so I loved that you touched base on core values because I literally was talking to two of my coaching clients about this week. I think people just like randomly pick core values. They're like, yeah, I need core values. Okay, it's something I have to have for my business. No, like you really need to dive deep into what those core values are because those are going to create your culture and those are what is going to actually drive action in your business and should drive action in your business. And like you said, it should be your compass to like bring you back to your purpose, right? I also love that one, I didn't mind the voice memoing. That was my job. Like I was there to support you. You were paying me for that, by the way. But I love that realization because this is why people crave leadership because people seek that validation and that reassurance because they really don't know what they're doing. So it's nice that you grew through that phase of being that person who needed to have that guidance to stepping into that role of leadership, which is truly understanding that you know everything that you need to know for your business. There's still room for growth. But then you started to trust yourself. And when you start to trust yourself, that builds confidence. And that is what attracts stylists to us because they're seeking the same things, right? And the hiring thing is so important because I think so many salon owners are so desperate just to get stylists that they really do overlook the important things and the culture building things that people bring to their business. So the fact that you're like, yeah, I just want to hire people who are nice and like have a good vibe, you realize, unfortunately, the hard way, which we all have to, like that doesn't necessarily work if you truly want an elite, successful salon. So I love those shares. They were so good. What was the most surprising thing about owning a salon? What didn't you expect and what do you wish you were warned about? Even though like you said that you've experienced all these things, not all were bad, but like what was that one thing that was like so shocking? You're like, damn, I can't believe this is what salon ownership is like.
This is a great question. And I think you could answer it in so many ways. And I think most blatant answer would be like, oh, it was a lot more expensive than I thought. But I think anyone who's opened a brick and mortar business would say that. And after I thought about this question a little more, I realized that it was the sacrifice of time that felt so, again, the word I'm using is unfair. It's having a baby in a way. Because here's this thing that you wanted so badly and you worked for so hard and you finally have it and you resent it because it blew up your life a little bit. Like everyone had warned me, it's going to be so expensive. You're going to be so frustrated. The stylists are going to bother you, blah, blah, blah. And so I was prepared for all of that. I knew I was going to have to fire people. I knew I was going to have hard conversations. I will also say knowing things and going through them are very different. But the sacrifice of time, I was working independent for almost 3 years where I had gotten so comfortable and I had gotten my independent business to a space where I was really only doing an hour or two of admin a week, maybe. And also, if I didn't want to do it, I didn't have to. Like my books were full, my social media and website looked fine. If I skipped doing that stuff here and there, it wasn't that big a deal. And I could leave work early if I wanted. I could take a week off and not have it impact that much. And it did not feel easy at the time, but when I look back on it, I'm like, oh, wow, that would be so relaxing now. So I think it was this sacrifice of time where I felt like I was there all the time. And I was, and I had to be because I had people, especially the first year, like all of your team members are new. So you have to onboard all of them. You have to train all of them and also train them in the color line. And when you first open, you don't have a mentorship program. You're the only mentor. I didn't have a manager. I'm the manager. I'm doing all of it. And now learned better systems and automations and am now getting to the point, which is really exciting, where I can start delegating things. But it was just this huge sacrifice of time where I went from working, 30 hours a week and getting paid really, really well to working what felt like near constantly. Because also, if I wasn't at the salon, I was at home on my computer or on my phone, just trying to market the salon. That was another thing that I think I was really naive about was thought like I could open my salon and the books would be on and popping. Like I'm just so good at marketing that my salon will be so busy and all it takes is a Google ad. And that is just so not true. So I think if I could go back in time too, I would, or any advice I'd give to potential salon owners is have a marketing plan and know and tell your team that you hire, this is a new salon. It will take time to grow the salon clientele. And my overflow clientele is not enough to fill someone else's books. And it's not like I was stepping back from doing hair altogether and giving my clients to everybody. I still do hair much more part-time than I used to. Another sacrifice of my time was I still was working with my clients and I felt like I had no time to myself, which led to feelings of resentment and also burnout. Thankfully, over time, I learned how to effectively manage my time, what tasks required my full attention, time blocking, which is something that you passed on to me, which I know a lot of really successful entrepreneurs do, and I can see why. When I worked independently, I never really thought about that much because my time didn't matter that much. But now my time is incredibly valuable. And so I have to segment it in a certain way. And then I think too, like learning what is actually a crisis and what is just sometimes these things happen. An unhappy client, for example, if somebody client complained, I would be freaking out. How do I avoid a bad review? How do I avoid giving them a refund? Should I just give them the refund, just hush money? Who's in charge? Am I going to fix their hair? Is the stylist going to fix their hair? And it would just take up hours to days of my time freaking out about it. When really, if you put a simple, system in place for dealing with these things, it's pretty much taken care of and it happens a lot less. So the sacrifice of my time definitely surprised me, which sounds silly because of course it's going to happen. But I just had really never thought of that until I was in it and very stressed out.
Yeah, I know when you're a new business owner, like what is a crisis and what isn't, because everything seems like it's a crisis and everything like totally triggers your reactivity. And it just almost puts you in a state of panic at times, especially like bad reviews and stuff, because you work so hard to build your business. And you're like, oh my God, this one bad review is going to ruin everything, but it doesn't. You realize that it doesn't. Were you in a suite before or were you just renting a chair?
I was in a Sola suite. So I was
Mm.
in a little room by myself and I loved it. I really did. Eventually, I missed the community and camaraderie of a salon. And also, when I looked at the long-term plan, financially, I didn't just want to work full time on my own until I retired. And that's what some people do, and that's amazing for them. But I got bored of it eventually a little bit. And like I said, I had gotten really complacent and comfortable. And I am an ambitious person. So I was like, okay, now what is next? What's next for me?
It's so funny because I get a lot of like hate on my Instagram from like salon suite owners by the things I post sometimes. People assume that, and I'm not sure if you were at this place, but like they assume that running a salon suite and a salon is the same. And it is so different. It's such a different experience. Can you touch base about like how you feel like your salon suite experience was in injunction to like what was different in comparison to having a salon?
Yeah, I think it's so true. Going back to like salon ownership really isn't for everybody. Just because you can run a salon suite does not mean that you can successfully lead a team, whether that be commission or rental. I think for me, and also I might get hate for saying this, but I do not consider suite owners salon owners. They're just, after having done both, I just
Same.
cannot see a way in which they are comparable. Besides the fact that I still work with clients and do hair, that is the only thing that I feel is similar. Of course, there are certain tasks like I still do inventory, I still do some bookkeeping, I still do X, Y, or Z admin tasks. I reply to my clients' messages, like all those basic things. But in every other way, it is so truly different. Even like something as basic as inventory. Okay, before I could probably skip inventory for 3 weeks because I knew the color line really well and I knew how to make stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm out of this shade. I'll mix these three. Or like, I don't need that lightener. I'll use this leftover stuff. Not to say I was cutting corners, but when it's just you, there's also no one to be upset if like, hey, we've been out of this for a while, or like, hey, I really need this for my client. So even that changed hugely. Also, the amount of money you're spending on your back bar is obviously going to increase drastically. That was a scary moment, was like starting to place, especially when we got busier. First, it wasn't so bad because we weren't that busy. Now that our stylists are getting busier, when I purchased back bar, I am like, oh my God, this hurts my soul. But it's a good sign. It means that things are going well. And back bar costs what it costs. That's just part of the job. But even working with clients, like I can't just show up and again, I got really comfortable. I could come in and maybe not look great because all my clients knew me and there was no one else to judge me and it didn't matter. And now I have to think, what do I want my team to see me as? What kind of leader do I want to show up as? And we're not a super dressy, business casual salon or anything like that, but there obviously are clear expectations. I can't come to work with wet hair and then reprimand a team member for doing the same thing if it's against our handbook. So I think all of those things are drastically different. And truly, again, I cannot stress this enough. It is not the same. There are things that you do that are the same, but the entire experience is so different. And I think maybe I was blindsided by that a little bit too. Like, I think when you go into salon ownership from suite rental, you just think of it as like me plus more, but it's just a whole different thing. And it's actually not even about you that much anymore. It
Mm-mm.
becomes about everybody else. So I think that too felt unfair, so to speak, of like, where do I fall in this equation? What about my needs? What about my goals? Like, well, those aren't really a priority anymore if you want to actually help lead people. So that is also drastically different. In my opinion, they cannot be compared as the same. And also, as someone who is becoming a successful salon owner, I wear that as a badge of honor now. And so, somebody who hasn't been through that, it's hard for me to not be like, no, it's not the same thing. You're not a salon owner. But I understand why that could come off as, some type of way.
Yeah, it definitely is not the same thing. Although I am so grateful because I feel like I did become very resourceful when I did rent. Like you said, like you figure out how to make things and like really utilize all of your resources, know how to mix colors to get certain colors and like how to solve problems when you have somebody that comes in and they're like, I want to do something completely different and you don't have the stuff that you need. Like you have to create it, right? So definitely grateful for that. And thank you for sharing your insight on that because I really do. I've had so many coaching clients that have gone from, renting a suite into salon ownership, thinking it's the same thing, and then having to dig themselves out of a big hole because of the real difference it is between renting the two. Okay, so what piece of advice do you have for somebody who is thinking about opening their own salon or is in the very beginning stages of salon ownership?
Oh, there's so much advice I could give. But I think the biggest piece would be take a really good hard look at what you want your life to look like for the next 3 to 5 years, because you are not going to open a salon and have support staff and tasks delegated and an education director and a creative. Like, you're going to be doing it all on your own for a while. If you can't spend a certain amount of hours a week doing that, it's not going to go very well. And you're going to probably hate it. So I think taking a good hard look at what lifestyle do I want to live. Being said, I think I could have done a better job of time management, setting boundaries right out of the gate. So I would also say get really clear on how much can I give, and what does that look like for me? Do I need to step back from working behind the chair? How many days can I realistically take clients? Financially speaking, what's in my best interest as far as that goes? But it is not just this, okay, we get it all set up and it's going to go smoothly and I'm not going to have to do that much. And I don't think I fully thought that, but I think I thought that way a little bit. And I think I was a little overly confident because I was really good at running my business by myself. And I thought, well, this shouldn't be that much harder. And it totally was. So I think advice being, yeah, look at your life and look at what you want your life to look like for the next few years, and then be very realistic with yourself. Also, financially speaking, you've spoken about this in the past in your own story of salon ownership, but be prepared to take a huge pay cut the first year to however many years until you start turning more of that profit. I've been really, really, really lucky with the situation I'm in because it is a three-chair salon. My overhead is less than if I had committed to a net lease with 20 chairs and all of that jazz. I also got really lucky because I found someone who was willing to negotiate a build out with me, which is basically unheard of. And I think if it had not been for that, I would not have been able to do it. But also being really, really realistic with your financial situation. The advice I think most salon owners give is save more, have more money saved, be prepared to not pay yourself, be prepared to live a different kind of lifestyle. I stopped getting my eyelashes done. That was hard for me. I really liked them, but I had to make some choices at first. So I was planning and paying for a wedding. That certainly, I would say, biggest piece of advice is don't do that. I would not open a salon the same year I was having a baby. All of those things, I think there's a certain amount of, it'll never be the right time, right? Like, at some point you just have to be brave and take a leap. But I do think I could have been more strategic with planning out how it would really fit into my life at that time. One other piece of advice I would give to absolutely anybody:
Yeah.
hire a coach, hire a coach,
Yeah.
hire somebody, even if it's just, for the first few months. I truly think I would have lost my damn mind. And I've worked with coaches throughout my entire career, and it has never once been the wrong decision.
I totally agree with that. Like everyone needs some sort of guidance. And again, like a valued person who's been where you have been that can give you
Mhm.
solid advice, and even just like have somebody just to like vent to, because really there's no one who understands what you're going through. Like you said it earlier, family doesn't understand, your spouse doesn't understand. They try to support you and give you advice, but they don't get it. So having
No.
somebody who truly gets it to help you work through and give you that push that you need at times is really powerful.
Right. And it is isolating because, again, salon owners don't want to talk to each other about this stuff. Even in my own immediate community, like, I have some really great relationships with other salon owners. And then, I don't know, it can just be lonely. And your hairstylist friends are not going to understand what it's like to own a salon.
No.
They'll understand what being a hairstylist is like. That's it. So I really can't thank you enough for all the ways that you helped me. And I still love tuning in, and I'm glad that I found a professional connection like that. That's really been helpful.
Yeah, I think going back to the suite ownership and the salon ownership, I think when people move from a suite to a salon, they assume that they're going to be making that same amount of money and taking home that same amount of profit margin. And it is not the same. So a lot of people who go from suite ownership to salon ownership end up financially struggling because your profit margin shrinks for sure. And I loved all of those tips. Those are all so real and beneficial. And I really do think that, you do have to, financially prepare for the worst, because there are times even now, like where I'm like, well, I'm not going to take a paycheck this week. because I have to, replace A, B, and C, or I have to, pay taxes, or, things pop up, the washer breaks. Like there's so many things that happen that are a financial burden that you really do have to financially prepare for those things. So I love that. Okay. So where can people find you and how can people get in touch?
They can find me personally on Instagram at the.hairbestie. That's my personal page. Our salon's page is at Adorn Hair Artistry. Our website is adornhairartistry.com. And I really encourage anybody who is thinking about this as a potential, please reach out. I'd love to talk to you. Any questions anybody has, I'm willing to share all of my knowledge and information. And I also love talking to just stylists in general at any point. I'm sure you feel the same at any point in your career, because I think there's such a need for support from one another. And I think one of the reasons that opening a salon blindsides you so much is because there's a lot of information gatekeeping around salon ownership. Salon owners don't want to be honest about things because they don't want to be seen as, well, you're not doing a good enough job, or you're not actually successful, or, well, if you weren't turning a profit in your first year, then that's bad. And that's none of that is true. So I think there's just a lot more room for honesty, but you can find me.
Thank you so much for being here. And I appreciate you taking the time today. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Yay.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elevate podcast. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. The Elevate podcast is hosted by me, Patricia Nowakowski, and is produced by Opulent Beauty Pro. To receive my free business guides, visit opulentbeautypro.com/free or click the link in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram at Opulent Beauty Pro or at Patricia_Nowakowski_OBS. If you love this show, please consider subscribing and we will see you next week.